a flash shooting light in the sky, oh, it must be a piece of space debris. There's a hasty conclusion based on inculcation that's being had there. So you're not necessarily proving this thing. You're just essentially regurgitating what you've been told about this phenomena. There's no way to individually forensically verify it. You have to rely on people who have a conflict of interest around disclosing the nature of reality to you.
Right.
So,
and to sort of maybe if Adam's listening, highlight to him that it's not as clear cut as, oh, well, I saw this and so it is that. You know, there's a lot of videos like this one, which I saw on Instagram. Granted, it's part of Flat Earth Fight Club. So, you know, you could say the same thing about it as you could say about NASA, which is that this is faked to, you know, to present a certain viewpoint.
I mean, my broader point is,
but the point here is this shooting star stops. It literally, if you watch the video, you see it, and I've seen shooting stars as well. This one stops, and there are, like I said, other videos showing all sorts of weird phenomenon as far as shooting stars go. And so to say I saw something and it is that, you know, it's as good as this video evidence, really, which is open to a lot of interpretation and isn't so as the astrophysical community would have you believe.
well, right, because again, there's a need to reify the model that's already being incentivized. So in other words, there's a fallacy of misplaced concreteness going on when we simply look at something, and just because we have a preformed idea about it, the very thing we're looking at has to automatically conform to that preformed idea. We actually don't know. There's no way to actually verify it.
Right.
Forensically, empirically, verifiably, what have you. When it comes to actual epistemological rigor, this projection of space and what essentially appears like a fixed, very gradually rotating sky. Oh, that's all that stuff is moving at, you know, gorillions of miles an hour, and we're so insignificant, and our ability to sense motion is so defective that we just have to believe that we're just one of those specks moving about at, you know, basically absurdist, masonically informed speeds.
On that note, can we talk about some of the discourse that took place on Adam's thread about Eratosthenes?
Oh yeah, the mythical measurer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought this was probably the most fruitful thing about episode 37 is that Adam felt the need to like post this, and then there was all this discussion going back and forth, people posting like Don Petit.
Absolutely.
You know, the NASA astronaut talking about how, you know, we destroyed all that technology. We can't get it back again because it's very difficult, you know.
Which is like classic Duper's Delight explanation.
I know. And people saying, hey, have Eric Dubé on your show. You know.
Well, we would love to have Eric Dubé.
We would love to have
show.
Eric Dubé. I think we're a little more deserving of it.
Yeah. And this is, I feel like this conversation with this content creator, No More News, has been very much long in the making. A lot of people have wanted there to be further exploration by him into this topic of discourse and discussion and really ongoing research.
Yeah. Well, I triggered this guy, Levi Richard, because you had pointed out that, well, he posted it, I think, that, you know, the whole legend of Eratosthenes experiment, which is like largely myth, and he dismissed it, but it is true that like there isn't a single writing in his name.
No.
It's all hearsay from other geographers or people in antiquity.
Or just retroactively constructed mythos to support the Pythagorean Samothracian concept of a ball world.
Right.
I mean, Pythagoras is created, or he's credited with the original idea of spherical geocentrism. And he was a Samothracian initiate. He's a mystery school initiate. So it's not like what I'm saying is not based on genuine scholarly research into that particular figure. I mean, it is. So, yes, the globe, the idea of a terraqueous orb world suspended in a vacuous chasm, moving quickly, going nowhere, is a gradually informed mystery school invention.
And this is kind of my central beef with Adam coming out of episode 37, is that he characterized the whole subject as basically a distraction. And if there's anything that Zetetic.news is kind of like about, it's highlighting the fact that that is not any more of a distraction than what he's focused on. And I don't disagree. The idea that like we have this cult,
this apocalyptic
eschatology that involves us giving our technology, our blood, sweat, and tears literally to this Gog versus Magog end time scenario, is a huge subject worthy of discourse and discussion.
100%.
But that is not to say that globe skepticism, to put it broadly,
is just Bible cosmology.
Yeah, it's
Judeo.
What did he say? Judeo disinfo deception.
And I will credit some of this classification as being, at least half true.
Some of it is
at least half true, because there are a lot of content creators that just lie heavy on this sort of Bible grift a little bit as their sole basis for denying the globe its model status over reality. However, we already mentioned in 37 that we think that that's kind of unfortunate, because it evinces a lot of the much deeper scientific and forensic research that does demonstrably show the current globe model to be utterly false. So the idea that just because some content creators sort of peddle this particular biblical cosmology as the basis behind FE does not mean that the entire topic can be pigeonholed within that purview. And I think that all you have to do is really look at Dubé's work. He's not rooted in any kind of Abrahamic belief system. And nearly all of his refutations of the globe model have absolutely nothing to do with the Bible or Yahweh or any of this other more Johnny-come-lately kind of Rob Skiba stuff, which, there's some, merit within the research to be like, well, maybe they did have an inkling that the world was more planar back then, but that's not a proof that it's not a ball. So I understand the burden of trying to demonstrate that it's not a ball by using that kind of dubious evidence. And it is true that a lot of flat earth channels, they are proud of that term, and they wear it big and bold and boisterously, and they use it as a basis to support their pre-existing belief in a higher intelligent designer who they dub to be Yahweh, et cetera, et cetera. But historically, really, Yahweh is a nationalistic God that only after Christianity became to be called the God of the universe. But being consistent, it is still the case that while there may be a superordinate being, that doesn't mean that entire topic of conversation can be reduced to mere biblical reductionism or something. Like I think that's in itself sort of a misdirection within the topic. So I think it just goes to
this tweet is a Adam Green disinfo deception.
Well,
in a way,
in the sense that he's clearly only seen it through this lens, and that's why he's
right into his work. And I kind of get why this was put out.
Sure.
From a self-interested point of view.
Sure.
To
get people to look
to speak
into
to the demographic audience that is already sort of bought into your line of inquiry.
Well, yeah, the problem is it's an extremely low resolution understanding of the topic to merely reduce it to a matter of scientific ontology versus biblical cosmology. Clearly, scientific ontology is better.
It's as black and white as Coke versus Pepsi.
It's sort of a straw man characterization, basically. Now, and it just goes to show it's really more indicative of where he's coming from on the topic than anything else. It's indicative that he's only really seen it in this particular frame of reference, and he hasn't seen it from the skeptical, empirical, philosophical frames of reference. And so I think
unfortunate because you attempted to bring awareness to him in that light.
And I was using many of the same philosophical, logical, rhetorical avenues that he appeals to in his skepticism of Judaism and the Bible and, Chosenite religiosity. And I think that if you were to be really logically consistent, you would have to still apply a similar argument to the very worldview or ontology or cosmology that you've been given as well. Mm-hmm. You've inherited as well.
Right.
In the same way that, he says he was brought up in a Christian household, as was I. He only gradually began to really question it. And everyone who questions the globe has been inculcated into the globe scientific worldview in the same manner that people that still believe in it. So, and it truly is belief-based, which I think has been demonstrated. And it's just important to unpack that.
It's evidenced in the thread itself, on this Twitter thread. If you find it on Adam Green's Twitter and you read all the comments, the globe proponents within that thread, it's belief-based.
Yeah.
100%.
It's conviction-based.
And they can't deny that.
They have a conviction, and thus they have a cognitive bias in only interpreting data in conformity with this misplaced concreteness of this ball world. I mean, come on. Do you really think that rain clouds in Australia are falling at perpendicular angles to rain clouds in Canada and in Newfoundland?
Of course.
I mean, that you have to defend antipodal orientation of things if you're going to uphold a discrete ball.
I was reminded by my child today, in anticipation of this show, one of the earliest childhood nursery rhymes that is very relevant to this whole discussion. And it begs the question why we stopped wondering these things. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Mm-hmm. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. And but Neil deGrasse Tyson is going to tell you what it is, and you're going to stop wondering.
Oh, we have that figured out.
Yeah. With that, we do have a caller in the queue. And I think this is a good opportunity to let them drop in and potentially share their take. What do you think?
Go for it. Absolutely. Let's call in.
Area code 978. Thank you for holding. You've been holding for 52 minutes. Hope you've been enjoying the show and didn't experience any glitches. I'm going to drop you in here and see if you're there. Hi.
Yeah, it's having fun listening. It's funny you break. Well, first of all, this is Riley. Remember from I think February. Now it's.
What's up, my figure? Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining.
Yes. Well, you mentioned Neil deGrasse. What was I going to say? deGrasse Tyson, and I remember I was looking at this. I think I actually posted this in the Telegram where I said where it was something about how he was supporting Soylent, and what was I going to say? I remember there was a few months ago when, in an attempt to save money, I got a set of Soylent, and I noticed that when I was drinking it, I found myself getting really angry all the time. And there's also signs that there's estrogen as well as sucralose blatantly in it.
Right.
So it's to make the claim that it's more healthy. And not to mention the other thing that worries me about Soylent. I mean, they joke about it with the title, but what was I going to say? If you ever seen the movie Brazil, for example, or Demolition Man, in every dystopian society, they take away solid food basically.
Absolutely. No, that's yes, Soylent Green, all of that. I mean, I think that there's quite an interesting play on words there, because lint means waiting, and Soylent is really made out of people, and so we're basically waiting to cannibalize each other at some point. The more we relent and acquiesce to the scientific authorities telling us that regular agriculture is racist, and we need high-rise pack and stack farms that are controlled by Bayer Pharmaceutical.
Well, the last upload that we did was censored immediately on YouTube, and it basically pointed out that we're a society of cannibals now.
Yeah,
because not all, but a lot of the cosmetics have derivatives of human biomaterial.
Yeah.
And the same is true of all of our soft drinks. The flavor enhancers, they're all developed with cultures that they've been developing and harvesting for 60 some years. The vaccines contain WI-38, which is a cell culture line of an aborted fetus, a baby, a baby's lung tissue essentially, and they are, whether you're eating it or you're snorting it or you're rubbing it on your face or you're injecting it. You're consuming it.
Yeah.
We're a society of cannibals. I think Soylent Green's another Soylent whatever. I've never even seen a package for it. I don't know much about it, except there's that clip from what movie? It's people.
Well, it's also there's a new kind of classification for this type of so-called science that seeks to essentially replace food with concocted laboratory chemicals and whatnot, and it's really soyance. Trust the soyance, SOYIENCE, and the globe. That is some hardcore, proto-soyance right there. And going back into the modern day, yeah, food.
This is also a big, trending topic too, because Tucker Carlson, that evil white man, has got some series out where he highlights, testicle tanning as a trend because men are trying to get their testosterone back. Why? Because their testosterone has been destroyed. I mean, it's not just Soylent, but alcohol is a huge phytoestrogen. There's
extended exposure of that has the body generate xenoestrogens, that have a similar kind of chemical reduction.
Well, there was a big report out recently about the wireless technology, the wireless earbuds, like the AirBuds and stuff, like having I'm not going to cite any numbers, but they're in the articles you can find, about, it's just massively more electromagnetic radiation than you would find in the background, and its effect on the brain.
And in episode 37, we did talk about the danger of the technocracy wanting to control people's thinking, and that being a basically end goal for a lot of this Great Reset stuff, is people voluntarily, just in the same way that people create Facebook accounts that is essentially an imperial probe droid, and that you log into and you self-surveil. Their dream is essentially for people to accept technology that allows for thought censorship as a form of public health.
Yeah, we actually, I can't find it right now, but we retweeted a tweet by Ann Tartary, which is a Tartarian-focused Twitter group. But they had posted some patents to television electromagnetic technology that was demonstrated to have an influence over your brainwaves and to influence the subtle, they even reference like subtle fields of a human being in a way that sort of puts them in a trance. So like that was another thing Adam Green like just sort of dismissed outright. Oh, so you're saying we're in a hypnotic trance? Yes.
Well,
Adam, you're saying the same thing. You're saying the same thing.
In a way, I mean, when
about the Judaism, etc., that is a trance, is it not?
Yeah, it is.
So why do you think you're exempt from being in a trance from some other, not necessarily Judaic related? I mean, it's Judaic related, but like technocratic, cosmological. Why wouldn't the public school want to put you in this cosmological box? That's such an obvious conclusion for somebody who's skeptical of the mainstream narratives around the mainstream traditional religions.
Because the power of suggestion and association-based reinforcement, inculcation, peer pressure, test taking, the grade gun, all of these things are used to reinforce allegiance and adherence to a specific worldview that is being doctrinally disseminated to you from the time you're like 5 years old.
Well, one thing I noticed, like particularly like around the time I finished high school, was that like there was a lot of this, like I feel like a lot of people have this thing where like they want, like they at least claim to have the desire to like strive for freedom or fight against the elite, but it's just that like they get a false idea of that. Like, for example, claiming you're a protester for being a part of Black Lives Matter is a perfect example of that, where like, and like, what was I going to say? I remember when I was in high school in my last year, which was 2015 to 2016, the teacher, I think the civics teacher, who was like the most political teacher, he like claimed to not be, biased, but like he would literally, not only would he only show news sources from like CNN, but he even went as far as like posting like John Oliver videos or like Samantha Bee videos, the comedians, and kind of just like being like, I'm not making any moral claims, but I'm just saying like this is what's going on in the world. This is the way it is. I think he also showed the Michael Moore documentary attacking Trump, and like I feel like that teacher himself was probably just doing it because he was forced to in the curriculum or whatever. But like it's like people like if it's like technically if you were to only be shown a source like that, by that logic, I can see at least maybe a young person thinking why they would come to like maybe side with a bunch of centralist ideas and left-wing ideas. But it's more so like the problem I think is you get like when people get very arrogant over their beliefs, they assume that somebody's ignorant when they say like they don't like Black Lives Matter or something like that. And And of course, ironically, that's sort of what those who are in power want people to feel.
Yeah, Riley, I mean, I was a sophomore in high school when 9/11 happened. And to your point, we were ushered into a room and we watched on CNN what they said happened. Their concoction of what happened on 9/11. And for years after that, unless you were like super high IQ and already sort of questioning these things, that's what you went with. And it was only after, many years after, for me, that I was like, what? No, that what? And I'm at the point now where, you know, understanding, having been through 4 years of basically graduate school training on film and media production, the whole thing, you know, in many ways could have been concocted. Now, am I going to get a $2 billion lawsuit now from all the 9/11 families? Some things that were fabricated about that event. That's another big subject that I wanted to talk about on today's show is, you know, the Alex Jones settlement and what that means for even our ability to say the things that we're saying right now.
They're already 2/3 of the way towards literal thought policing through the technocracy, through self-appointed devices. And yeah, what you're talking about is absolutely the case with most topics, most issues throughout people's education. They are giving you a very gerrymandered, myopic view of things, and that's true across the board, whether it's physics, whether it's chemistry, whether it's social science, whether it's history. It's always through an establishment myopic purview that seeks to reinforce the very attitudes and worldviews that support the ongoing growth and health of the state, the establishment, and the broader world consensus that is counterfeit. It's a counterfeit reality.
I just am, honestly, it's selfish. It's maybe wrong to be excited by these developments, but to see Alex Jones on the public stage being sued for this obscene amount of money that exposes so much hypocrisy, and then for Kanye West to say what he said, we don't even have to play the clips. Like, and
people know.
Yeah, you know what he said. You know, and then now the George Floyd family members are going to sue him for $250 million. But, he's going to buy Parler, and Elon Musk, you know, I'm going to buy Twitter and see all this. I am excited for the future of Zetetic.news because this shows we're in the right place at the right time, where
maybe a little early,
maybe a little early, you know, the idea of, well, you have to just, so PayPal is is a private company and they can do whatever they want, which means they can censor your free speech. Well, okay, if you're a retard, you know, you're going to endorse a company that believes that. Obviously, you're only going that way because they agree with your political ideology and you're okay with that. Obviously, if they were cutting you off, you wouldn't be so cool with that. But the net is people are continuing to move in this direction, which we've been predicting, to, you got to have your own platform. You have to be your own infrastructure provider. You have to be your own financier. You have to be your own bank. And so net, some of the big things that have happened since episode 37, you know, in my opinion, and we'll get into, I have some macroeconomic things I want to pick your brain on, but like with the platform wars, the metaverse wars, the infrastructure wars, you know, it's not good for the people, but it's good if you are already oriented to like build the alternative. So like Kanye buying Parler, Elon buying Twitter. In my opinion, they're late.
Well, yeah, and
because they're buying something that was already built.
Are highly dubious characters.
Of course.
So of course, it's the whole Lenin thing of like, what's the best way to control your opposition? Well, that's to lead it. You lead the very thing you want to control or head off at the pass. And
it's like if Kanye was so awake to what was
if
he was so awake to what was going on, he would have already bought Parler. He wouldn't have waited till JP Morgan cut him off to go buy it. I'm wondering myself, who's going to process this transaction or finance him at this point?
I mean, here's the thing is, it looks like a big tar and feather operation where, oh, look, crazy person say this. Oh, you agree?
How far can that really go? Because they are not going to get money out of Alex Jones.
No.
They're not going to get money out of him.
It's a symbolic slap. It's basically saying, you are the disinformation dictator. We're going to stand
It's just
up
more
to you.
PR shit, which
Kangaroo court stuff,
actually, in a sense, like you could argue, underscores your kind of thesis at this point about Alex Jones is what this promotes his brand.
Right.
It promotes his brand.
It does.
Like it inspires people to go buy more products from him.
That, and it also basically mainstreams him.
Oh, and it martyrs him. It martyrs him.
And
he gets to go out on a big public platform, wherever, and basically call out, Kvitch, how corrupt everything is.
And I mean, the second I saw him on Piers Morgan, what was that, back in 2016? 1776 will commence again. I mean, I was like, okay, that seems like some occult thespian stuff, where he's going on this huge platform, admittedly a dwindling one, but especially at this point.
Yeah.
But back then, it still had a pretty substantial viewership, and it was almost like that was the moment where the mainstream was starting to migrate towards this kind of alt light,
and it was kind of like either you loved Alex Jones because of that thing he did on Piers Morgan, or you hated him because of that thing that Megyn Kelly did with him.
Either way, right. Either way,
so he's polarized.
Either way, he's a household name.
It's right left paradigm writ large, really. Right. What do you think, Riley?
Oh, well, it got me thinking. I mean, granted, I suppose Alex Jones never said that but like from what I understand. Not that I'm a shootings expert, that ever since sometime around 2015 or so, there were a lot more mass shootings in general, right? Because the thing is about that is if they're so concerned about shootings, why is it I find the fact that they're so hung up over any incident from so long ago to be particularly to prove that they don't care about Sandy Hook, they care about Alex Jones.
Well, that, and it's like this fine is supposed to resemble, punishment for the cruel and unusual punishment that these parents went through for being, basically questioned about their, children's death. Okay, so where's the $20 trillion penalty for the past 4 administrations and all of the hurt they caused to the various people they killed who they dubbed terrorists?
There are so many different comparisons that you could make. So many. One of them, I was curious. What did the big banks pay for all the narcotics money laundering that they admitted to and were fined for?
Half $1 trillion.
No.
Yeah.
They were fined. As far as
but
they were fined $2 billion.
Oh, that's cost of doing
basically
business.
Half of what Alex Jones was fined for. And all he said were some literally zetetically oriented questions about,
Yeah, it's like, do you doubt
things that were weird about, legit, they were weird.
Let's just look at other so-called shootings. Let's see. The Las Vegas one. Did you look into that one?
Yeah,
'Cause-
the only guy really looking into that, I think he got killed. Or
Oh.
no, suicide. No, I forget.
Oh yeah. So are you gonna really side with the idea that there's no incentive for the state to stage shootings to embark on a public scare campaign to further? It should be $10 billion. We should just, put all of future generations that could possibly be related to Alex Jones in debt. That's what $1 billion is.
I think this just underscores Alex's own argument for himself is, well, why not make it $1 trillion?
Right. Why not make it
It's
10
absurd.
quintillion, 10 quadrillion?
Well, one thing I was wondering is, like, do you think that Alex Jones, after that incident, is kind of like, I guess, like, do you think that, like, now he's not safely able to keep, like, running his whole show as honestly as he used to be able to? Like, he's kind of been defeated?
I mean, that would be in my opinion, sort of a naive take. I think that whatever happens with Alex Jones, his operation is more or less complete in a lot of ways. What's it? 78% of people think that we have failed leadership and that the economy is going in the wrong direction. I mean, he was saying back in the early 2000s, when he was doing better work, admittedly, I think he got lighter and lighter and more diluted over time. But, back in the early days of the 2000s, he had some pretty insightful hunches as to where the trail of breadcrumbs goes from the two towers and which country it's the bonanza of bread is located. But he was never able to really go with that for obvious reasons.
Not long term.
Yeah.
But to your point, I mean, he has a rightful credit to launching the Ron Paul revolution. He has his audience a rightful credit to, to helping Trump get into office.
Well, that and also just the health war point of view.
Yeah.
I think that
And he
fluoride
has
awareness-
said in his own broadcast, ideally, I could just retire and go fish and make documentaries, which, maybe, Alex, you should do.
that was really when he was in my 9/11 martial law, rise of the police state.
Yeah, didn't he make documentaries more like in the early 2000s?
Yeah. I
I feel like part of one he made about Obama. Yeah.
the Obama deception. Yeah,
I think to your point, though, rather your question, Riley. I mean, anytime you have an organization of 50 plus employees, you are naturally gonna start self-censoring, and there are obligations. He has obligations that he feels he has to meet, and we. Actually, this was a good discussion on our Telegram channel about Adam Green being an agent and how one could potentially be bought off. And I asked the question, well, because someone was alleging that Adam was an agent in the Telegram. And my question was, well, how do you think he was actually bought off? And I think the same question is valid for Alex Jones as well. If in fact you do think he is a agent, because the Hollywood the Hollywood conception is like some shadowy figure comes into your office or pulls you off the road and makes an offer you can't refuse and like threatens your life and that sort of thing.
Not to say that doesn't happen.
Not to say that doesn't happen, but I think there's a more subtle influence that happens when you actually gain an audience and become dependent on the audience's donations or whatever, they're buying up products, such that even if you tell yourself, I'm maintaining this sort of, when you start to receive donations or purchases that are substantial. And then you also see those same people making comments or writing you mail and telling you how they think you should be running things.
Mm-hmm.
It has an impact.
Definitely.
Because at the end of the day, these people are human beings, and we're all influenced by the other human beings in our life. So,
well, I think that, like, I think, like, oftentimes too, like, it doesn't always matter as much. Well, I suppose in the case of InfoWars, Alex Jones has been a very important figure for a long time, but, like, I feel like it is often better to look at it from, like, a collective point of view, like, for example, like you said, the company, or, for example, like what you just said about, influence. Like, it makes me think of, like, how a lot of, like, the free speech alternative platforms, for example, have all, if you look it up, a lot of them have been reported to, like, have their different hypocrisies. Like, what's it called? Gather was, like, censoring Nick Fuentes, for example.
Right.
And, like, I think, like, that's because it can sometimes be inevitable, like, to claim that there's ever, like, a completely free platform or a completely free news network isn't true by nature. But, like, what was I going to say? There's actually also, like, one thing I was curious about. I'm not sure if, like, I believe this myself, but, like, I know one thing you've probably heard before is that, like, people say Alex Jones, they claim to have some evidence mainly based off, like, the look of his teeth and his weight, that in, like, 1998 he was replaced by somebody.
Well, that this is actually a one that I'm fairly familiar with, is the Bill Hicks thesis, which is that Bill Hicks...
Oh, right, that was who... Yeah, I forgot about that.
And I mean... Yeah, it says that it looks like it's still streaming live, but it's... All right, it looks like it's back on your screen.
all right, we're still there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay on the current live stream. Yeah, it looks like we're back live again.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your show or meeting number and press pound. Enter your 6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-In Studio web interface. Audio recording is on. Dual channel.
And we're back. So sorry for the blip.
Yeah, just as we get starting about how ScrewTube has automated bot algorithms to detect wrongthink, it shuts us down.
Yeah. So we had to reboot our entire computer, like the whole thing just crashed right as I was talking about how it might not even be a human being behind the keyboard listening to what we're saying. It's just they've got advanced voice recognition technology. They're extending that as fast as they can across the world to all the different languages so they can analyze that data and then act upon it in a programmatic way. And you know, I don't have the resources to yet anyways to forensically prove that we were just sabotaged and sabotaged earlier. We've had multiple glitches throughout this show, but it's a common trope in the free speech community that they're listening. I mean, literally, if you can't even broadcast over the electromagnetic spectrum over radio without a license, supposedly. You know, they control the airwaves. And that was one thing I wanted to get through to Adam Green, you know, too, is, and actually, I think I'll have to open Telegram, but there was a good meme that I posted there, sort of pointing out that you can't go up, you can't go horizontal, you can't go anywhere, you can't even broadcast your voice through an invisible spectrum of information without the government like controlling you. So why would, you know, he asked, in my opinion, kind of a naive question about the motives. Why would they lie about that? Well,
pretty compelling
the same
motives.
reason they would lie about anything else, for their self-interest,
Right.
which are numerous.
It absolutely replete, and it dovetails in with everything that he's talking about. I mean, he even agreed right before we got into it that, you know, yeah, I mean, if they could convince the whole world of a fictitious savior, then he could easily see some of these more modern occult charlatans getting away with all kinds of scams and hoaxes. He did admit that.
True.
So it's just we're inviting him to really take that lens a little bit farther than he's on. A lot of different people. We host a call-in line looking for more callers. Really appreciated the last caller, Riley. He's a repeat stalwart listener, supporter, and came up with some great points, insights, inquiries. So that's the kind of attitude we want to foster. So, and yeah, we were getting into.
Here's the meme that I was referencing from Not a Globe Faking Space. Freedom, you ain't free. You can't go up because they own the airspace. You can't go across the sea because they own the waters. You can't leave your own country without a passport. And they're actually trying to like make it, you need a passport to go within your own country.
Right.
You can't do anything without permission. Try opening a business. Try anything.
Right.
Think about it.
Right.
Try being a hairstylist.
Right.
You want to cut some hair? You're good at it? You need a license from the public health department. You're in an open air prison. Don't pretend that you're not.
And I would say that last sentence, don't fool yourself. You have to take into account the whole quote that's attributed to Mark Twain, which is, it's easier to fool someone than it is to convince them they've been fooled.
Right.
And so maybe open up the possibility to the fact that maybe we're still fooled about a lot of things. Yeah. And that we shouldn't be the type of people that are so hard to convince that there's foolery about.
Right. And that brings me to another one of the key topics I wanted to bring up on today's show, episode 38, is some of the new content creators which we have installed on Zetetic.news is home site, specifically on the space news section. If you go to the news menu and you look at all the different options, there was a space news. I've changed it to lost history and space news because I think they are inexorably intertwined.
Absolutely.
So the whole questioning of the shape,
that's really just the first tier,
is one part of it. It's not the whole kit and caboodle.
No.
The other part is just, if that is a lie, what else is a lie? About everything?
What's lying beneath our feet?
Yeah, beneath our feet, in front of our faces, etc. And one of the content creators, which I recently discovered since we last spoke, is this YouTube channel, Mind Unveiled. Now that we've mentioned it, they probably won't exist on YouTube anymore, and they'll have to go find their data and try to re-upload it somewhere else.
It makes you think, like, do we really only have 423 subscribers? Or is it 3 times higher?
Who knows?
Is it 10 times higher? Is it 5? I mean, it's like, you can't even trust any of the information or the metrics or anything coming from the very people who have an incentive to censor you for wrongthink.
Yep.
So how can you trust any of the metrics? It's just about the content and the opportunity to engage with what is increasingly being obviated as an open field of inquiry, the whole world.
Well, the good news is someone commented that, LOL, YouTube irony. So I think that was probably Riley in the chat, understanding that we were cut off at a very key section of our discussion, but
100%. I mean, because it was gonna crystallize back in with loaded frames and the fact that, look, everything is algorithmically manipulated, even our very perception. So yes, there is a hypnotic trance element to information relay and information engagement, And there's power of suggestion that is triggered through pre-existing inculcation, psychological conditioning, what have you. So, yes, this is a much more complex, multifaceted reality than we have been led to believe on so many levels, religion included. But it expands and is far more just flabbergastingly different than what we've been told. And I think that is true through history, architecture, history, philosophy, you name it. It runs the gamut, as they say. It runs the gauntlet all the way through the superstructure of deception that's been built around us for what seems like time immemorial.
And I think that's a good segue into a snippet that I wanted to play of this content creator, Mind Unveiled, on YouTube. And they have a lot of content that I have yet to even traverse, but they are for sure zetetically oriented, perceived by inquiry. They're just asking good questions about preconceived notions that have been just served up to us on a silver platter. And to bring this conversation back to our roots at Zetetic.news, we've talked about before the influence of our geographic area. If we're going to be like, we're gonna sort of characterize, the influence of a given population. I think the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Asheville, the North Carolina really is so influential, and there are a lot of untold secrets about North Carolina and its history that speak to what we're talking about, not only control of our geopolitical system, the financial system, the socio medical system, like with the cerveza virus, for example, and the propagation of the national fluoridation policy, the pushing of the LGBTQ agenda in our public schools. Like, we are really leading the charge, unfortunately, in many of these areas. But Mind Unveiled did a specific almost 2.5 hour special on the Biltmore estate in Asheville, which we have talked about on previous episodes as being a good example of this insane architecture that just seemingly appears out of nowhere over a very short period of time in a very let's say primitive era of technological development, which would make such a structure, which has really not been replicated since then, seemingly impossible. And I've been to the Biltmore estate, not only on a field trip, but in family trips and so on. And I always come away with that very impression. Like, how did this happen? How did this get constructed at this time? Wow. That's like almost the tourist attraction itself. Is you get a brief glimpse, a little shard of information about this incredible house, which has nonsensical proportions and purposes. You're told this story about this artistic, this art collector, this eccentric of a wealthy family.
Right.
But then you're also supposed to believe that same family doesn't really have the same kind of material wealth as, say, someone like Bill Gates anymore.
Right.
Even though, Anderson Cooper is sitting up there at CNN and he's an heir. It's just like something's not adding up here.
Sure.
So I want to play a few minutes of this. Mind Unveiled, Biltmore Unveiled, Vanderbilt's Underground, Asheville, North Carolina. And I highly recommend you just listen to the whole thing, because they start with the whole Vanderbilt family story to, you know, their trajectory to prominence, how they acquired their wealth, so call it, and then what they started to do with it. And it's
Right.
maybe I'm just a bit retarded, but when I go there, that's all I'm asking myself is like, really? This guy, this is just a little tiny bit of wealth that he had, and this is what he constructed.
Yeah.
In like a hobby sense, like, oh, they just had this, like, during this weird period, this fancy for building mansions out of nowhere. It's just so bizarre.
And yet they're so glorious, and yet went so quickly out of style that even people hints that maybe had a more traditional sensibility with way more wealth could not even begin to establish costs for what it would take to reconstruct it.
It's highly conjecture when you talk about the cost.
So these
are
this comes into the whole question of the narratival construction of world historic individuals and family dynasties, and how much of this history is factual and how much of it is counterfeited and superimposed on
everything is on the table for dissection. So
Definitely.
We're going to play a few minutes of this. Check this out.
Easily accessible, and you are most likely to hear it from a local legend. No one knows the answer. It's almost as if it's lingering on everyone's mind, but no one knows, so we just all accept the mainstream history. But deep down, we know that there has to be something more. There have been rumors of there being secret passages beneath the Masonic temple since its supposed construction in 1915. This is a well-known legend, and eventually, a paranormal investigator went to investigate with thermal sensors, and he did indicate where a tunnel would be near their own private bowling alley. But it would require excavation, which the members won't allow. So now it's basically blocked off because so many people tried to go see it. The local historians are just a bunch of skeptics, saying that no, these are just a few tunnels, prohibitions, blah blah blah. Man, these historians have no clue how to think. They just read the books and they have rote memory. That's not thinking. That's not comparative research. That's just mindlessly parroting the mainstream narrative. There's plenty of physical proof that shows multiple underground chambers in Asheville that everyone can see for themselves. Why would there be a door in a basement?
Throughout the 20th century, different businesses and their owners would renovate and modify this old building.
What did you think the first time you walked in this building?
How we're going to do this because it was cut up into all kinds of small offices. Before this, it was the city and county parole offices, so everybody had an office, and all that had to be torn out and got down to the bare minimum. It's come a long way since it's when we started this project to become a restaurant today. So.
It turned out the owners of these old businesses decades ago would not rip out any old renovations. They'd simply add layers of construction.
Sandblasted the original brick. We took up 3 layers of hardwood floor to get to the original.
Literally 100 years of, I guess, progress rolled back to the original state.
Nature.
And the developers didn't realize the significance of what they'd find in the basement and how it would spark their creativity.
This just kind of jumped out at us. This giant tunnel in the basement made its history clear.
The Pax Tavern basement features an old entranceway to a tunnel system that was used to run bootleg liquor underground between downtown Asheville buildings. The entrance features 2 heavy iron doors. Stuart Coleman gave us a tour.
This tunnel here, it had access to a series of tunnels on the other side, and it had a double locking mechanism that locked
You lock inside.
You lock yourself in and you lock other people out.
So these tunnels, were they really a secret to the authorities, or were they a secret officially, but everyone knew what was going on down here?
They were not secret because they run even under the Masonic Temple, and they run up here in front of the Biltmore building, and they discovered them in the park when they were redoing the vitalization of the park. There was a series of 4 tunnels that crossed over each other, and they were severed also by utilities.
Let me just remind you guys, you can go on the Wikipedia page and read about the mile-plus long tunnel that they dug just to run electricity to the Biltmore estate from a river or something. A first of its kind, by the way, with like Edison's involvement. Okay. This is with horse and buggy technology. Let's play the rest of this clip.
No
So
hydraulics.
it's kind of a similar video, but did you hear what that guy said? What would be the implications of there being tunnels that go all the way to the Biltmore? So this is what they tell us. They just built this whole city, which is completely on a hilly landscape with all these interconnected underground tunnel systems, basements with doors, a supposed subway project. How the heck did they do that in 1880 in such a short time period, and no one's gonna ask any questions? Subterranean levels to a city imply that there were actually the lower level of the building. I know that is not what we're taught, but why else would there be windows and doors in a basement? It's almost unimaginable because the alternative theory is so drastically different from what we have been told in our schools. Our programmed minds trained to react when faced with such cognitive dissonance must label the material as ridiculous, a complete fairy tale. And even though that may be the case, reality is far stranger than we were led to believe. I don't think we know everything about reality, and we deserve to question what we were taught in mainstream history. Do you believe everything we're told about the robber barons? To be honest, I don't, and I deserve that right. They have the burden of proof, and I'm just not convinced. I see red flags everywhere I look, and now that I look at this whole subject with new eyes after looking into Tartaria for so long, you can clearly see that this is some type of propaganda to some degree. I think we can all, or a large majority of us, agree on that statement. They were celebrities, right? They were married to state politicians, right? Let's ask these questions, as it does seem that many people are beginning to wake up during these times. With that, we go to the final chapter.
It's a huge, very compelling area of inquiry that again is ongoing. It's expansive, and the implications are vast.
They have multiple, Mind Unveiled on YouTube has multiple exposés of the I'm trying to remember what they call it exactly, but it's it's like the reprogrammed, and it's this whole trend in the early 1900s, late 1800s of building orphanages and mental institutions for the societally unfit. And I think their overall gestalt is that this was like a reset program. And
Right.
basically they reprogrammed a big part of the population. And it makes me wonder, because the oral history of my family doesn't really go back that far. Even though we supposedly, have written history going back at least 5,000 years.
Yeah, makes you question the veracity, efficacy, and reliability of dating really much of anything.
On that note, there was another subject which came up for me between episode 37 and now that I wanted to highlight in this same vein, and that's the Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
You know, I sent you several messages about that because I had thought about it before. I just had never really delved into it. And I've even been to one of these big, huge mosque structures in the United Arab Emirates, and they're obscene. They are like
super intricate,
nonsensically proportioned, at great expense, ornate, filled with artifacts, not in the same vein as like Biltmore, where Biltmore was actually used as like a storage facility for so-called antiquities and other like subjects of national security interest during World War II. It was literally a storage facility commissioned by the government. Now it's state-owned, the whole thing, so anyways, the Taj Mahal always struck me as odd because, again, we're given this same kind of like touristic-y story about a ruler who loved his wife. And
how quaint.
If you even look into the ruler who loved his wife, he had like thousands of wives. So already your logic is being assaulted, right? By that very fact. And then you look at when it was purported to have been constructed, and the sort of the mainline academic literature around its dating and its construction are all European accounts of it after having been existed for like 30 some years, supposedly.
A big chunk of
and
the
so they're literally
too.
traveling to India and encountering the locals and getting stories from them about how it was constructed, and that is what we know in the West as being the history. So do we believe what the 1700 era European travelers were hearing from the locals in India at that time, or is there maybe something more to this?
Right.
And you look at the official story, y'all can go on Wikipedia and read about how this guy commissioned, 1,000+ elephants to carry marble that was quarried 350 miles from where it was built. And all sorts of other stuff like this, getting all these jewels and blah, 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 which they may well have had, just in the coffers, not necessarily having to go out and trade for them or whatever. But just the logistics, the manpower, etc., like on its face seems preposterous.
Ludicrous.
Because look at how India, who is becoming more industrialized, how they construct today. Are they even capable of these feats with hydraulic technology? I mean, why aren't we doing this anymore? Oh, it was just, excesses of a oligarchy, blah, blah, blah. It's the same pyramid story of, it's just, they commanded so much power, they had all these slaves, and you just see, it's all the
artisan,
the manpower,
mastercraft slaves,
and also the beasts of burden. These slaves were also very adept, apparently, at using beasts of burden to lift heavy weights and move them over huge distances. Wow,
animal telepathy, cool.
And so I started to look into this and like some of the counter theories to this. And there's a lot of evidence actually that it was a renovation on top of something that existed much more ancient
Of course.
than before.
Just like huge swaths of the buildings we have today.
And I'll provide the link in the description. I don't have a specific clip here because the whole discussion is like 30 minutes long, but Marvin Mills was a professor who put forth a theory that, you know, Taj Mahal was perhaps an earlier Vedic Indian tomb or palace, and that was seized essentially by the Islamic invaders of the time, and, you know, basically put a facelift on it that was Islamified.
Right.
And my whole, you know, revelation on this is, if the original story was hard to believe, how they constructed it for people of the 1720s,